I'm Grzegorz Matyszczak. Currently, I'm an Android developer in Droids on Roids, located in Warsaw. In our company, we like to keep up with all the new technologies, all the new libraries. So this time, I've looked into Constraint Layout for Android platform. And I'm going to share my knowledge with you today. Probably you're also wondering why I called it A New Hope. Well, let's find out. Quickly, agenda for today. I'm going to start with what is it all about, what's all the magic about with Constraint Layout. I'm going to introduce you how to start with it, how to go through some basic, how to use it. I'm going to do an overview of Constraint Layout features. And I will answer the question, should we actually use it already? So let's begin. What is it all about? We should consider a Constraint Layout as a library. And as we know, a library should solve some issues that we already have and make our life easier. So what issues do we have when we are building some layouts? First of all, actually I have a question over here. How many of you built a layout that it was just a nesting nightmare? Like you were not proud of that? Well, it was actually working, but well, you wouldn't show it to anyone. Me? Okay, so, well, yeah, nesting. I set a keyword over here. So as we know, there are measure cycles in each view group. What does it mean? In this process, layout, it's measuring all its children. And for example, if we use a linear layout with weights, it always has 2 measure cycles. If we use relative layout, it also has always 2 measure cycles. So if we nest one in each other, well, the number of measure cycles will be just multiplied, and it's going to be a lot of measures. And as I need to tell you that it's not good for performance. Other issue? Well, another question to you. How many of you used an old layout editor in Android Studio? Does anyone? Actually? Okay, one person. I'm quite surprised. Because personally, I didn't use it. I use always an XML editor because I just didn't find it useful. But since a while, we have a new layout editor in Android Studio. And well, it would be actually nice to have a layout that is tied with the new layout editor. Like we can easily drag and drop stuff, build a layout in the layout editor just with this graphical tool. And well, here it is, A New Hope. And its name is Constraint Layout. It was first introduced on Google I/O last year. Because I didn't mention it's a library from Google, so big stuff. We can consider it as, it's quite similar actually in usage to relative layout, because the main concept is to position the views inside relatively to each other. So we can call it a relative layout on roids, actually. It's a flexible layout, which means that we can build a complex UI just by using this one layout. And it helps keeping flat layout hierarchy. As I said before, nesting is not good, so if we keep the layout hierarchy flat, it would be good for performance. And it was also built along with the new layout editor, which means that it's going to be easy to use it in that layout editor. So it's quite tight with that. And also it is an unbundled library, which means that we need to add it separately to our project through Gradle. Yeah, let's go to some basics, how to start, how to use it. First of all, requirements. We need an Android Studio, obviously, and version 2.2 is, well, it's okay, but I would recommend to use version 2.3. It's not yet in a stable channel, so it might have some bugs, but already a lot of bugs for building a layout with Constraint Layout in Layout Editor was fixed there, so I would recommend to use actually this version 2.3. The minimum API for that is API 9. And one thing we need to do is just add the Gradle dependency. And the current version of Constraint Layout is beta 5. So yeah, so just use this one. And it was released like in the beginning of February, I think. So actually, I'm going to turn it off. I'm going to explain now how to build just like some simple layouts, some simple stuff. I'm going to switch actually to Android Studio. So yeah, it's OK. So this is a new layout editor. I made the font bigger just for you guys to see everything. It doesn't look like ugly in normal life. So here we have a blueprint mode, and this is a design view mode. So let's add some text view actually to our layout. I'm just going to switch to the blueprint mode. So if you press on some view, we have a nice properties panel over here where we can change everything. And if we want to constrain one view to each other, we simply drag, for example, left edge and attach it to the right side of other view. We can drag a top edge and attach it to the bottom. And as we see, the other view is constrained to the first text view. If you drag it, it moves around. And if we go to the XML file, what we see here is two new attributes. It's constraint left to right of and constraint top to bottom of. And what does it mean? We simply, in the first one, we simply take the left edge of our view and attach it to the right of the view that we put ID over there. And the same stuff with top to bottom of. And actually, we have a lot more attributes. We can have like constraint start to end of, constraint end to start of, etc. And the other thing that we also can do is, if we have text views, we can constrain them by their baseline of the text. So the baseline will be just in the one line. So how we do it? It's also simple with the new layout editor. We simply, well, let's remove all the constraints that we had already, change the mode, and drag the baseline to the other view. And as you can see, we can drag it around, and it's constrained also. And in XML file, we have a new attribute, constraint baseline to baseline of. What we can do also is to constrain our view not only to other view, but to the parent, which is a constraint layout. And to do that, we also simply drag it. Well, actually, let's remove this one. Let's drag the top edge and the left edge to the parent. Oh. OK, it's not easy. And what we have here is that we don't need to actually use the ID of the parent. We can simply put a keyword parent, and that's enough for that. So while we have our view constraint to parent, we can actually center it in the parent also. How to do that? We can simply constrain both sides of the view, and by default, it will be centered in the available space. Yeah, let's talk about also view dimensions. So as we know, in each layout, we have a fixed size. So for example, we can put like 100 dp, and everyone knows what does it mean. Wrap content, probably I shouldn't explain that also. And there is a new one called match constraint. So if you simply put a 0 dp in our layout, and in the view in that layout, it means that it will spread in the available space. So it will adjust to the constraints. And this is instead of match parent, because we actually don't have a match parent attribute in the constraint layout anymore. If we use it there, since last version, it's going to throw an exception. So better don't use it. And yeah, a quick demonstration. So since we have that view constraint to the left edge and right edge of our parent, we can, oh, actually I can do it also in the layout editor. I can change it over here in the properties panel. I can change it to fixed size or to the match constraint. As you can see, by default, it took the whole available space. So that's it when it comes to basics. Let's go through some cool features that Constraint Layout already has. And first one is bias. So what does it mean? We can position our view in some percentage of our parent. So in Android today, it will look like this. Let's change it to wrap content. And by dragging this icon over here, we can adjust the horizontal bias. And it's just generating some attribute in the XML file. Let me clean it up a little bit. It's over here. It's a horizontal bias. And we can also have a vertical bias if we constrain it to the top and to the bottom. Yeah, so this is the first feature. The other feature, a guideline. It is a helper object that we can use also when we build layouts in Constraint Layout. We can use it to position our view inside that. If, for example, we have that view over here, let's clear all the constraints. So how we can add our guidelines? We can do it also in Layout Editor. There is that icon in the top panel over here. And we can simply add vertical guideline. Let's add another horizontal guideline. And as you can see, we can position it also by dragging. So let's constrain our view to one guideline and second one. And when we drag it around, it also changes its positions. So it's quite cool actually to use it. So we can also position our guideline in the constraint layout in 3 ways. So first one is a margin from the left side, a margin from the start, margin from the end, and the percentage of the layout. And in XML file, it looks like this. It's a separate object, but it's not going to be visible in the layout. It's considered just as a point, so we can constrain our views to that. We can also find it by ID in our class, but well, it's not going to be visible at all when we build our project. So yeah, that's it about guidelines. As you can see, also there are 3 ways, as I mentioned. Yeah, the other thing is dimension ratio. So how many of you actually built a view one time that you wanted to keep some ratio? For example, you had a width and you had an image and you wanted to keep the height to be, for example, like in ratio 4:3 or 16:9. Probably some of you did. Well, was it painful? Was it a lot of effort? Probably some, right? So now it's out of the box. You can use a constraint layout to do it. Actually, also I'm going to show you in Android Studio how to do it quickly. Let's change our layout. It's well, it already has 4 guidelines, and I constrained an image view that has 2 dimensions set to match constraint. So whenever we change position of our guidelines, it will also change the size of our image view, the width and the height. So for now, we can set a ratio by clicking this icon here in the corner. And by default, it's 1:1. Let's change it, for example, to 16:9. And as you can see, yeah, let's change also the bias. And as you can see, the ratio is kept. And whenever we change the position of the guideline, it will also be kept. Whenever we change the width of our image view, it will adjust the height also. And it's quite tricky in the XML file because it generates this line in which we have first letter indicates which dimension should be adjustable, which one should change its size to comparing to the other one. So this means this height, and after that there is a ratio. if, for example, we want our width to change our size, we can do it also here. I don't know if you can see it, but there is it is highlighted in the top and the bottom. This means it's height. And if we change it again, clicking here, we can change it to width. So for now, it's just ugly, but let's make it smaller. Let's make the bias in the center. And as you can see, when I change the height, it also changes the width. If I change the width, the height is kept. And in the XML file, the letter changed. So yeah, the aspect ratio is kept like this. And we can have actually 3 ways of setting dimension ratio. So for example, we can have a view that it has only one dimension set to match constraint. And then we can only use a float value because, well, we know which dimension we want to change. So it will be a float value, and it's going to be a ratio between width and height. We can also set it as width colon height. Or as in this previous case, we had both dimensions set to 0 dp. So we need to put a letter which indicates which dimension we would like to change. And other cool feature that I really like is a constraint set. And what is it? It's a helper class also, like a guideline, but it allows us to build our layouts in the runtime in Java code. And we don't have to use layout params anymore. We can just use this constraint set, and we can set all the connections over there and just apply it to our constraint layout at the runtime. How do we use it? Is we simply create a constraint set object. And we have 3 ways actually to create the connections. So first one is to connect all the views manually by all the methods that are shipped to us from the API. The other way is to clone it from a layout resource. Or the third way is to clone it directly from the constraint layout object. And when we do it, we can simply apply our constraint set to the constraint layout object. And then all the connections are already there. And another cool feature about that is we can simply create a constraint layout animations. So as you see here, we have some image view on the top, some title over here, some floating action button, and we have 2 states of the app. First one is when the image is just in the top and there is a description below. And the second case is when we have the image spread on the background and the description is gone. So we can simply do that with the constraint set. Let me just find the appropriate class. Actually, I'm going to show you first the layouts. So the first one I called activity main normal. And this is the first state where the image view is on the top. OK. All right. And as you can see, well, it looks nicely in the layout editor. If you look in the XML file, well, there's quite a lot of stuff happening. I'm not going to go through all of that. And the second layout is activity main view, which is the second state with the background and the title on the top. And if we go to the main activity class, well, this is just that much code for doing that. So first of all, we bind our view. I'm using a butter knife library. The second thing is to create 2 constraint sets for 2 states of the application. And there's a Boolean also indicating in which state are we. And yeah, so in onCreate method, we can simply clone existing constraints to our first constraint set and clone the layout resource to our second constraint set. And in the onClick event for the floating action button, we use the transition manager API just to begin delay transition on the constraint layout. And then we just, depending on which state are we, apply the constraint set to the constraint layout. And that's it, actually. And everything is out of the box. So you can see how easily we can we can create cool animations just using like a few lines of the code. And the last feature I would like to go through is chains. So what are they? You should consider it as similar behavior to linear layout. It's like you put a linear layout inside the constraint layout, but without any nesting. And we can have like horizontal or vertical chains. And basically, it's just a group of views that it's connected to each other with the bidirectional connection. So we always have a head of the view, and it is the leftmost or the topmost view of the chain, and the other views that are connected with each other bidirectionally. So this is how it looks in the code. I will also go through that with Android Studio. Let's go to chains, XML file. I created here already 3 text views. And as you can see, well, let's connect them. First one to the parent. This one also needs to be connected to this one, the rightmost, and let's connect it to the middle also. All right, so this way we've made a chain, and in the XML file, it will look like this. So we have a connection. This is the leftmost. It has connection to the middle one. This one has the middle one has connections to the left and right, and the right has a connection to the middle one. So this is how to create the chain. What we can actually do with the chain. So there are few styles that we can set to our chain. The default one is spread, which means that all the views will take available space. This available space will be divided between the views in the chain. That's the simple idea. And the other style is spread inside, which means that the available space, it will be divided just between the middle views, and not the leftmost and the rightmost view. And there's another style called packed. It will pack all the views inside. If we have packed, we could also set a bias to that. And and another style is spread weight. So it's basically the idea from linear layout where we set width to be 0 dp, and we set weight, and it's just gonna divide the available space considering the weights that it has already. So I can also show it in Android Studio how to do it. So if we go to the layout editor, we can change our style over here. Yeah, so this is spread inside. This is packed, and we can change our bias over here. And yeah, this is again spread, but let's set some weights over here now. So let's change it to 0 dp everywhere. And for example, set the weight of the first one to be 1. This one to be 2. And the third one also to be 2. And as you can see, well, it's divided all the available space relatively to the weights that it has. So actually, this was the last feature I would like to talk about. And should we actually use the constraint layout already? Well, considering that it's still in the beta release, there might be some bugs, there might be some issues. Well, Google engineers say that it actually should be a release candidate, but well, we never know actually. So I wouldn't recommend it to use it in the production yet, but I would seriously recommend you to play around with that, just to learn all the features that it has. And just, get used to that, get familiar with that, because probably it's going to be a recommended way how we should build our UIs on Android platform in the future. So it's just going to be a matter of time as well when we should use it. So I would say, yeah, go for it, try it out. And here I put some links that I use here. First two are to documentation. Well, I find it really useful because we know how documentation for Android looks. Sometimes it's messy, sometimes it's missing something, but for constraint layout, it actually has a lot to read, and it covers all the features that it has, and it's really nice to read it. And there is also a talk from a guy that actually works on the constraint layout, so it's worth to watch it. And third one is, it's my post I wrote about constraint layout. It's about early version. It's about alpha 3 or 4. And there was 9 alphas, and there is now 5 beta 5 versions. So you can see how much things changed already in the constraint layout, how much they did, and how many bugs they fixed already. And that's it from me. Thanks for attention. If you have any questions, feel free to ask.
Have you had any major problems with it?
Well, that's a good question, actually, because in the beginning, there was a lot of problems with that. It was really hard to use it with the layout editor. It was hard to even go through that in the XML file. But with time, they fixed a lot. And for now, I would say it's quite stable, and it's quite nice to use it, actually. So you can try it out right now. It's quite stable. Yeah?
Did you try iOS constraints?
No, I know it's probably quite similar, right? Well, I can imagine that the concept is taken just do it quite similar, but yeah, maybe. I haven't used the iOS version, so for me it's hard to compare that. But yeah, this constraint layout for Android, it really has a lot of features. Well, none of the layouts has so many features like constraint layout, actually, because they put features, features from other layouts just put in one big layout, and you just need to learn all of that. It's not you can use it out of the box. Yeah?
How did you get this result that fab is on
in the top? Yeah.
Without using coordinator?
Without using coordinator?
Yeah. Did you use it or?
No, I didn't use it. I use only constraint layout, and it's positioned with a bias, actually. So I put a bias, horizontal and vertical, and in the first view, and in the second one, I just set the bias to be lower, and that's it. Any other questions? Yeah?
I'm just about performance compared to related layout. For example, as I saw, it's usable on API, for example, 10, for example, on Drive 2.4.3. And should, for example, should I replace related layout or concept layout to remove nastiness of my layout? But such as how this will occur on performance for some performance-based.
Yeah. Yeah, this is a good question also, because if we have similar layout built in relative layout and similar layout built with constraint layout, and there is no nesting, well, the performance is going to be actually the same. When we get the best gain, the biggest gain for performance is when we remove nesting. So, for example, if we have nested relative layout in something and other layouts inside there, and when we change it to constraint layout, and there is no nesting anymore, then we get the performance the improvement. If it's quite similar, there is not much of the gain, so I wouldn't change it then if it's quite complex. But also we have cool feature in Android Studio where we can it can change our existing old layouts to the constraint layout. It can just change it by itself and do all the constraints. I haven't tried it on the complex UIs. I just tried it on the simple UI. It kind of worked, so I hope it's going to work also on the complex UIs.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.